Welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with athletic performance dietitian at the GWS Giants and Cronulla Sharks, Jess Spendlove. This episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is sponsored by Val Performance, the team behind the NordBord hamstring testing system. So the NordBord is the fastest and easiest, most accurate way to measure hamstring strength. So with the NordBord, you'll get the right information to make the right decisions at the right time. If you want to check them out, you can check them out at valdperformance.com. This episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is sponsored by Train with Push, creators of the Push Band. So the Push Band is the first scientifically validated wearable device to provide objective insights into your performance in the gym. So using accelerometers and a gyroscope, the Push Band is able to use bar speed to regulate load and volume based on your ability in the gym on any given day. So you can use the Push Band to quickly establish 1RMs with submaximal load so you can plan with confidence. So the Push Band portal also allows you to create programs before entering the gym to make change on the fly depending on how you are performing on that given day. So you can customize everything from target velocity ranges to differentiating velocities for warm-up and creating working sets and supersets for yourself or your athletes. So if you do want to know more about Train with Push and the Push Band, get yourself over to trainwithpush.com. They also got a great blog, so you can catch up with some guest bloggers such as Mladen Ivanovic and Dan Baker. So be sure to check them out at trainwithpush.com. Thanks for tuning in to episode 92 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. So today we've got the athletic performance dietitian at the GWS Giants and the Cronulla Sharks, Jess Spendlove. So massive thanks to David Joyce for making the introduction between myself and Jess. It was great to get Jess on from a completely different point of view. We've never really had a nutritionist or a dietitian on before, so it was great to get that part of the jigsaw nailed, really. And it's something I'll be looking to get on in the future because I think it's such a big part, and I think it's, like we've discussed in the episode, it's something that often falls on the plate of S&C coaches or sports scientists, especially in kind of lower level, even sub-elite athletes or situations. So hopefully you get something from this and take that forward into your own organisation. So we discuss everything from educating players, and just on that, Jess has kindly provided some slides from a presentation that she gives draftees at the Giants every year. So if you go to paceyperformance.co.uk/92, there's a little link about halfway down. You can click that and get the presentation which Jess gives. So we also discuss what she terms the basics. We discuss hints and tips for breakfasts and nutrition post heavy gym and heavy field sessions for the AFL that she prescribes for guys in the AFL. So just before I let you get into the chat with Jess, just want to make everyone aware again of Dan Baker's tour in cooperation with Train with Push. So the dates so far that are coming up are Northeastern University on July 15th, Northwestern University on July 17th, and Texas A&M on July 23rd. If you are interested, get over to trainwithpush.com and all the information will be on there. So I hope you enjoyed the chat with Jess, and I will speak to you soon. Okay, thanks for tuning in to the Pacey Performance Podcast. So today we've got Jess Spendlove, who is the athletic performance dietitian at the GWS Giants and the Sharks. So welcome to the podcast, Jess.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. So obviously I'd spoke to David Joyce a little bit ago about getting you on. So it's great to get you on and feel another slot in the Giants backroom staff on the podcast. So, anyone that doesn't know who you are and the kind of role that you have at the Giants, just want to give us a little bit of background into you, really.
Yeah, sure, no worries. So I'm an accredited sports dietitian and ISAC level 2 anthropometrist. As you mentioned, my title at the Giants is Athletic Performance Dietitian, and I also work with the Cronulla Sharks Rugby League Club. So I've been a dietitian for about 6 years now, and initially started working in a more clinical role in the hospital setting, so working in both inpatient and outpatient clinics, and that was really great. I learned a lot, but for me, always wanted to work in sports nutrition, and during that time I was just quite proactive in seeking out any opportunity that was related to sports nutrition, and was able to establish some good networks and connections, and found a mentor in someone who's very respected in the field of sports nutrition, in Helen O'Connor, which was just absolutely invaluable. And during my time working in the hospital, I also started doing a little bit of private practice work in a sports medicine clinic, and soon after that was fortunate enough to get my first opportunity working with the Cronulla Sharks, which is hard to believe was 4 seasons ago. So I've been with them for 4 seasons, and I'm currently in my 3rd season with the Giants. So
how do you split your time, Jess, between the two?
So I'm 3 days a week with the Giants, and I also travel with them in season, and then I'm 1 day a week with the Sharks, and I also dabble in a little bit of private practice in my spare time. So yeah, that's how I split my week.
Is there a kind of big network of sports dietitians in rugby league and in the AFL over there?
Yeah, in both codes actually. It's the AFL. There's basically every team has a sports dietitian, which has actually been advocated for by the AFL, which is really great to see.
Okay, yeah.
They see that there is a need for that position and role there. And in rugby league, I think about 10 of the 16 or so teams have a sports dietitian, so it's also definitely growing. And yeah, everyone's quite open and happy to share information, and which is really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you just want to give us a little bit of a kind of an overview of what a sports dietitian in a professional sport is. Obviously, we were talking before about the kind of different terminology. We'd have a kind of nutritionist here, which may be slightly different over there depending on qualifications. Just want to give us a little bit of an overview of what your kind of day-to-day, week-to-week work may entail.
Yeah, sure. I guess if I had to break it down into categories, there's probably 3 main categories I guess I work across. So first, obviously, being anything to do with nutrition, what the players are eating, what the players are drinking, their hydration. The second would probably be their body composition, so monitoring that and applying what information we're getting from that to how we manipulate their diet as such. And then the third category would definitely be a role in the supplements and what's actually being approved to be used and how it's being used. So I guess the day-to-day in terms of the nutrition and the hydration is, some of it's quite basic in the ordering of the snacks and the food that's available at the club for the players to have in and around training, communicating with the chef who works out of the facility in terms of what can be provided on the days that meals are being provided. Obviously, the provision of meals and supplements and things while we travel, so anything from writing the menus, coordinating the lunch packs, coordinating the post-match meals. As I mentioned before, my role does involve a game day role, so similar to what I've just mentioned, ensuring anything to do with food, the supplements, the fluid at the ground, so before, during, and after the game. Obviously, then educating the players on what they should be eating and drinking and when, and really not just talking about nutrients, but talking about foods, and then also more importantly, showing them how to actually apply that knowledge. So we do some cooking classes with the draftees or any of the players identified as maybe lacking in some of those skills, shopping tours if needed. So I really do believe, it's not just about knowing what to do. It's more important for them to actually know then how to do it. So just really showing them that through the foods that we have at the club and when we travel. With the body composition, so I predominantly just do skin folds. We do use DEXA scans for certain players, so long-term injured athletes or players that we just need a little bit more detail on in terms of muscle and fat composition, and if we think there's any kind of asymmetries going on. But traditionally, I mainly do skin folds, which is pre-season monthly, and then once we're in season and things are a little bit more stable, bi-monthly. And then the third category, which I mentioned, is definitely having quite an active role these days in the supplements program. So, I mean, it's not just myself; it's kind of myself and the chief medical officer, which make the decisions around what supplements are being approved to be used. But I guess it's myself who's actually doing the research and suggesting what we're going to use, how we're going to use it, making sure that we're not wasting money on supplements. So, if we've got a budget, I need to stick to that, but I also want to make sure that I'm optimizing that and not using anything just for the sake of it. So, and then also, I guess the day-to-day at the Giants, because I am there 3 days a week, I'm mainly involved in the actual delivery of that program. So putting the vitamin and the mineral supplements out, coordinating with, we've got fast track program interns who are fantastic, and they have quite a role in the preparation and delivery of the supplements as well, based on what I've essentially prescribed for each player. So yeah, we actually put the individual supplements out and make the individual protein shakes and things for the players for after their field and weight sessions. So I guess that's the day-to-day and the role of what I do.
That's cool. That's cool. So when it comes to educating the players, I don't know if you do work with the kind of younger age groups, but would there be a different type of education, or how you would deliver that information for younger players compared to the kind of seasoned pro? Yeah,
definitely. I definitely like to start with the basics and not assume. So even the seasoned pro, what I've kind of learned across the last few years is that they might even be getting some of the basics wrong. But definitely with the younger athletes, you want to relate to them and make it as interactive as possible. And in terms of presentations, I'll generally use a slide, but I might have more pictures rather than words, or it might be more of a practical workshop. So actually having, again, like I was kind of saying before, like showing them what I want them to eat. So having examples of meals and the different compositions of, the pasta or the rice, so the carbohydrate to the protein portion, and what day, what kind of composition is most appropriate. And again, with the snacks, showing them what a pre-training snack should look like, and actually having a physical example of that there, and same with the recovery. So yeah, with the younger athletes, I definitely find the more interactive it can be, and the more actual examples, rather than, again, just talking about nutrients and big words and things that they're not really going to possibly understand.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the basics, which you mentioned a couple of times there, what do you mean by that? I mean, what's basic for maybe you and I may not be as basic for the guys that you're working with. So you just want to give us a little bit of the kind of background on maybe that and kind of philosophy around that?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, looking at the day-to-day and supporting an athlete's nutritional needs to maximise that training adaptation and that performance. So I guess there's a few key areas I like to focus on, and it depends what time of the day somebody is training, but that pre-training meal, so for some athletes that might be breakfast, for other athletes it might be that afternoon snack, but making sure that they're turning up to training and they've had an adequate breakfast or pre-training snack, which has some carbohydrates, has a little bit of protein, that they're hydrated, I guess the second basic for me would also be that recovery meal or snack. So, making sure that they're getting that hit of protein in, in that first 20 to 30 minutes following training. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of a protein shake. They might be going home to have dinner, so that might suffice, but making sure that they are actually going home to have dinner, and if not, then looking at some appropriate recovery snacks or supplements which are going to meet those requirements. And then I guess the third basic is just trying to get that structure across the day. So spreading those meals out and getting the 5 to 6 meals rather than just kind of a cluster of food all at one time of the day and not matching their needs and requirements.
So what kind of impact can that have compared to the kind of 5 or 6 meals that are spread out? How can that impact performance if they were to or they are to just have kind of the staple 3?
Yeah. In terms of body composition, I often find that the players who might struggle with their body composition, so depending if they're trying to gain muscle mass or lose body fat, I'll often find they're the players that aren't getting that spread. Just they're not optimizing that muscle protein synthesis and utilization of certain nutrients. I mean, the other downside is that they just might not actually be meeting enough of their requirements in terms of vitamins and minerals if they're only having 3 main meals, and then they're not getting suitable snacks in and might be missing out on certain food groups. So, it'll generally come in the form of either a body composition issue possibly, or in the form of, I guess, that adaptation to the training that they're getting, because they're just not actually getting enough of, like I said, whether it's a macro or a micronutrient.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that, in my experience, was always something that it was kind of a battle against was breakfast. Mm-hmm. For lads, especially the younger age groups that I used to work with, obviously used to turn up early, had to get there before the first team and things like that. And breakfast was always an issue in actually getting them to eat something. I don't know if that's an issue for you guys, but how do you kind of remedy that and maybe make something suitable that fits in with the kind of the structure of the day? Yeah,
definitely find this is an issue. So get a lot of the younger players who are just coming through the system and are used to going to school and then training afterwards and aren't in the habit of having a good breakfast, then coming into a professional sporting situation where they're training and they have to be at the club at 7 a.m. It's definitely not something that comes naturally. So for me, I like to take the approach of something is better than nothing and develop that habit of just taking something on board. So for me, I like to encourage them to obviously have something before or while they're on their way to the club. So even if that's in the form of a banana or maybe some sort of meal replacement drink like a sustagen or an up and go. Again, not saying that these are the ideal breakfast to have, but it's developing that habit of having something. And like I said, something's better than nothing. And then when they arrive at the club, I like to talk to them about having a top-up snack. So I guess at the Giants, we're fortunate enough to be able to provide some fruits and cereals and bread and that kind of thing, so they can top up with what's available at the club. But I guess if people don't have that access, just encouraging their players to bring something then to eat when they're at training. So kind of splitting that meal and enabling them to get a little bit more in without necessarily having to do it all in one hit. And once that habit's there, then really trying to optimize that. So some of the slides I've provided with you actually kind of give some examples on what I would suggest as the ideal kind of breakfast, and then what I would suggest as some good options for the quick kind of on-the-go breakfast. And if it's got some carbohydrates, some protein and some fluid in there in some form, that's a pretty good start. And then, optimize that over time.
So you mentioned a couple of times about things not being ideal. How much compromise with food does it have to be with players, especially the kind of older, maybe like I say before, the seasoned pro who's been doing something and it's kind of worked, what they perceive is worked for them for the last 20 years? How much compromise is there from your side of things to to trickle in what you actually want them to have and do?
Yeah, look, that's a tough one when you get someone who's turned up at the club and they're 10, 12, 14-year player who has a very successful career and they've got some questionable ideas around their nutrition and what works for them. I mean, for me, it's just establishing a rapport with them and understanding what they're doing. And I mean, I'm not necessarily trying to change what they do because what they've done has worked for them. But if it's something that's not necessarily what I'm trying to educate and advocate for the rest of the playing group, I'll kind of mention that to them and ask them to not necessarily promote that. But then also just, I guess, like I said, have the conversation, educate them once that rapport's there. And interestingly, I have had some of those 10, 12, 14-year players come through the club with some certain ideas on what they can and can't have. And I've never drunk Gatorade during a game, or I've never had a gel. And over time, just getting them to practice some of those preferable practices in the training environment has actually led to them taking some of those things on board during the game. So it's a tough one. Yeah.
Just from my kind of personal interest and kind of not working directly in professional club, does the kind of the fad diets still kind of filter their way into the players, and you're still battling against the kind of things they may read in what we have over here in the tabloid newspaper, like the Daily Mail? Do they still get kind of them messages that you're battling against?
Definitely. I think if you talk to any sports dietitian or nutritionist, it's definitely an ongoing battle. And I mean, it shows that the athletes have an interest in what they're reading and what's out there, and it's good for them to come and question, I guess, what they should be doing and how they can optimize, because it shows they want to improve themselves. But for me, I don't take the approach that I put everybody on the same diet or the same meal plan or anything like that. I did mention before, I do believe in frameworks and systems and, you know, things like the distribution across the day and the 5 or 6 meals and the hit of protein with each meal. But then for me, it's working with that athlete, listening to what they're saying, what they think works for them, and then making suggestions around that. So, look, you know, high fat, high carb, low fat, low carb, that's all very much in the media and in the scientific literature, and it's really up for debate at the moment. But for me, and I guess what I could suggest for other people who are having these conversations with their athletes, it's just really think back to, you know, we're all scientifically trained. We all have an understanding of basic biochem and energy metabolism. So even if we take it back to that point and educate our athletes, you know, in a basic understanding of that and actually teaching them what their body needs for that certain type of exercise. So, for example, in AFL, it's a very fast-paced, high-intensity, intermittent sport. So if we look at the energy system that they're using when they're doing their conditioning and they're developing that, it's carbohydrates, the main fuel source. So for me, it's not about putting my players on a high carbohydrate diet all day, every day, but if I can ensure that they're getting that availability when they need it. So getting a good hit of carbohydrate before they're going to have a conditioning session, and then recovering from that, and then maybe on a low day or a rest day, then really pulling back and reducing that carbohydrate intake. I find they get that and they respond to that. You know, their energy levels in training are great when they're eating more carbohydrates for those appropriate sessions, and then on their rest day, they really understand that, okay, well, I'm not running around, I'm not running 12 kilometers in a training session. I obviously don't need that. So really pulling back. So for me, it's just, again, educating the players as best I can. And I mean, to have those conversations, you need to be present to have them, and you need to be, you need to have that rapport there, and also talk to them in a language that they're going to understand and not get too into the nitty gritty unless they really want to get into the nitty gritty. So, yeah.
Would you mind giving us maybe an example of kind of a post kind of heavy pitch session meals that you may prescribe to a certain player?
Yeah, sure. So when I'm working with the chef at the club in the pre-season, so post main training day sessions, we're fortunate enough to be able to provide some meals, and that might come in the form of like a chicken stir fry with some brown rice, some lean chicken breasts and some vegetables. So a composition might be kind of a third of each, or if you were to really break that down, it'd look probably like a 200-gram piece of chicken, a cup and a half to 2 cups of brown rice, and then 2 cups or so of vegetables. Some other popular meals with the players are still pastas and things, although it's quite interesting to see how that's evolved and how it kind of changes between the younger players and the older players. Other dishes might be chicken burrito style meals, but again, that kind of the tortilla with the chicken breast and quite a bit of salad and vegetables on there to kind of get that third ratio that I mentioned. They're just some examples.
No, that's cool. So it was funny. Obviously, you guys have got a lot of traveling over there. Big distances and on flights and things. How that's obviously a big challenge for you, getting things sorted in kind of hotels and things like that. How do you go about dealing with that kind of challenge that you have over there?
Yeah, look, that's definitely been a work in progress, and logistically, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years that I've travelled with the team. I think we travel 16 games or so this year. So for me, it's again getting organised ahead of time, making contact. So, for example, with the hotels, making contact well ahead of time, sending through nutritional requirements and menus, and sometimes I send recipes to make sure that the standard is, or the quality is standardised across our stays. So for me, being organised, sending that information off well ahead of time, so then the hotel can then send that back. I can check it, make sure everyone's on the same page. In terms of the catering for when we actually travel, so we provide lunch packs for our players. So I have a few different caterers who will provide a variety of kind of sandwiches or wraps or salad boxes with bread on the side, that kind of thing. So again, it's just well ahead of time, sitting down with them, I guess specifying nutritionally what we need, and then looking at the examples that they've got, and then also talking with the playing group and explaining to them what's on offer, and getting them to actually send through their preferred requirements. And then once all that's kind of sorted, it's really just a matter of sending the order off every so many weeks, and coordinating that at the airport or at the hotels. So
how much input? You mentioned it there, and there seems to be quite a lot of input from the players. Is that a kind of across the board, that amount of input that the players get to what they eat and what they don't eat?
Yeah, look, I definitely like to involve them and ask them what they would like, and obviously it's within reason. I'll often provide a short list of selections that are nutritionally appropriate, and then get their feedback. So one thing for me in particular, so I initially started doing this with the post-match meal because a lot of the players at the Giants were struggling to eat after the game. And we were providing things like pasta dishes and risottos and stir fries and things. And after talking with them, they were just across the board. They're like, we've eaten so much pasta before the game, or we don't feel like that really starchy, carby, heavy kind of dish. We want to eat more finger food style, and we want something that's a bit more enticing. So that's when we went to more things like the burritos and the tacos, and even some healthy-ish pizza options. So the smell's there, B, the taste is there, and they've told me that's something that they're more likely to eat. So that's where that kind of came from, and then I guess that's just expanded across the board in terms of the menu while we're away, and then also the travel pack. So they definitely get input, but at the end of the day, I need to make decisions around what's nutritionally appropriate for them as well. So it's a good balance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you just want to talk to us a little bit about protein, and maybe when you're placing that in the day, for different types of days, obviously like a high running day, a high gym day.
Yep.
You just want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, kind of mentioned before, obviously, I definitely think it's a really important nutrient, and most people are getting enough. That's what the research and the literature and everything tells us, but it's more around the spread and the distribution across the day. So, the researchers found that there's kind of this threshold or ceiling effect with around that 20 grams or so of protein. So to ingest more than that at a meal or snack really just in anyone, whether you're male, female, athlete, non-athlete, seems to just then be oxidized and used as a fuel source. So from that, there's been, I guess in the applied setting, it makes sense to then try and get that better distribution across the day. So try and hit that 20 grams or so at breakfast, at snacks, at lunch and dinner. And again, the research that I've read tends to kind of be people are, and it makes sense, people are getting the majority of their protein at lunch and dinner and probably not getting enough at breakfast and at their snacks. So for me, I really try and encourage the players to get that spread. And, when I talk about protein, I clarify with the players that it's not just about having chicken and eggs and steak 5 or 6 meals.
Rocky style.
Yeah, we don't have to be that hardcore, guys. It's using dairy is a great source of protein. It's the only other food group which is a complete protein source, and they're generally more open to having maybe some Greek yogurt or some cheese or some milk at breakfast or across the day to get that better kind of distribution. So I guess in terms of amounts, I don't really encourage them to vary it all that much, whether it's a training or a non-training day. Pre-season, I'll encourage them to have a little bit more, so maybe up around that kind of 30 grams, just because their increased needs, so their overall energy intake is higher, and they're also in the gym a lot more, and their tonnage and reps and all that kind of thing is obviously a lot higher. So it might be increased a little bit in pre-season, but I guess from what the literature has told us is that distribution should sit around that 20 grams, and it should be pretty consistent across the day. So I guess that's what I kind of aim for. And like I said before, I meet the differences in energy demands more by periodizing the amount of carbohydrate or fat an athlete might ingest. And that's again based on their training or what their body composition goals are or their age, their needs, that kind of thing.
Nice. Very interesting. So just coming on to something that's been mentioned a couple of times, the dreaded S word, the supplements. Do you just want to talk to us a little bit about, firstly, how you use supplements and obviously mitigating the risk of anything bad happening to the players?
Yeah, definitely. So like it's a very interesting area, and I think the environment's obviously changed quite a bit over the last few years. So in Australia, there was a bit of a scandal with one of the AFL and rugby league teams around this area, and it's really forced the environment to change, and for the better, really. It's really just raised awareness around that risk of doping and players being aware of what they're actually taking on. So if I talk about the AFL, for example, they've been quite proactive, and they've advocated and developed a code-wide policy which then each club needs to uphold. And I spoke a little bit before about my role and the chief medical officer's role in upholding that. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of research that needs to go into meeting those requirements and justifying what's being used and how it's being used. And then on top of that, my role then is to obviously do a nutritional assessment with each of the player and then justify what's being used. I mean, for me, and I'm sure if you spoke to any sports dietitian or nutritionist, we're always going to say we've got a food first policy, and That's 100% the case with myself and what I advocate at the Giants and at the Sharks. But there is definitely a role for supplements, whether it's convenient, so having that protein shake after weights before they're going into gymnastics or Pilates or deep hit or whatever it might be, or whether it's one of the tendon boys who needs a therapeutic dose of fish oil. So there definitely is a place for it, but it's just taking that kind of focus off supplements and justifying it in its appropriate context of an athlete's diet. So the AFL have also really been proactive and they've got a database where every player needs to essentially log what supplements they're taking. So, I mean, the groundwork is really done behind the scenes. It's all kind of preloaded into there for them. But they need to go through each week and essentially tick what they have or haven't used. And then if they've taken anything external to what's being provided at the club, they're meant to log that as well. So, again, that's just to kind of really make them aware of what they're taking and not just, take something because someone's telling them to. It's also basically a way of advocating for the AIS supplements classification system to be used and really only looking at using A and B category supplements. So supplements that are proven to work or have some pretty promising evidence out there and not getting caught up in terms of whether it's financial reasons or using supplements that just aren't proven to work, which are your category C, and obviously definitely staying away from your Ds, which are your prohibited. So I guess that's the supplements environment in Australia, and I mean I'm sure it's the same worldwide. And if clubs have the capacity to use batch tested supplements which are Informed Sport or approved or some other kind of third party testing, that's obviously going to be the best case scenario, so they can ensure that what's being provided isn't contaminated or anything.
So the AFL doesn't have a preferred supplier or anything like that?
Not across the code.
Okay.
Different clubs have partnerships or sponsorships with certain manufacturers, but no, there's not kind of one provider to the whole code. Yeah.
So would you say that the kind of a supplementation fits in your kind of structure best immediately post a heavy session, whether that be a gym session or a field session, or is there other little bits dotted around here and there? I know that's a kind of blanket statement, but trying to give a blanket statement like kind of like pre-session, before bed, is there anything in there that's kind of that you're doing that's interesting apart from the kind of post session?
Yeah, look, we've I guess part of what I've been able to do over the last few years at the Giants and the Sharks is kind of establish like a holistic nutrition program, which definitely has a supplements role and has a daily supplements role. So again, I'll talk mainly about the Giants because I'm actually the one rolling that out each day. But the players will come in and we've essentially got a supplements room which is connected to a corridor and there's a shutter and whatnot. And I've got on the bench I've got a little chart with all their numbers. So each day they'll essentially come in and what's been prescribed to them. So there are some team-wide supplements, and then there are also some individual supplements, certain ergogenic aids, things like beta-alanine or beetroot juice or creatine, etc., which not everybody's on. It's definitely an individual prescription, but then it's also the players that are committed to taking it. So I definitely don't believe in putting everybody on something just for the sake of it and making them take it on a training day. If it's something like beta-alanine or nitrates which need to be taken every day, the players need to be taking it every day. But yeah, essentially there's some supplements when they first come in the morning, and then before main training session, more so pre-season, there might be some caffeine in some form of a pre-workout or no-dose tablets or something like that. That's kind of available. And then during the session, more like your sports foods, so sports drinks or gels. Post-training, obviously we've covered different kinds of shakes made on different bases depending on what their requirements are, so whether it's water or milk or even coconut water, and then and then other just electrolyte replacement style drinks. But yeah, so a bit of a spread in the form of proteins and ergogenic aids and vitamin and mineral supplements and whatnot, just across the day.
So one thing that you brought up there, which was beetroot juice. So that's something that's made its way into obviously supermarkets and things now, which seems to be getting quite a bit of publicity. You just want to one very last point. Why do you guys? What's the benefit of taking beetroot juice?
So we've only got a few players that are using the Beetroot shots based on a few things: taste and cost. But yeah, the main reason for using it is that it's essentially a vasodilator. So consuming it in the elite athlete population every day, that's what I encourage. And then maybe a double dose game day provides that nitric oxide, which essentially is a vasodilator, so allowing more oxygen essentially to get to that working muscle. It's something only a few of the players are on, but those that are on it really believe in it and like to use it. But again, it's something they need to take every day, and then a double dose game day.
Okay, excellent. So just before we I let you go, where can people keep up to date with what you've got going on?
Yeah, so bit of a newbie to Twitter, but I am on it, or trying to be more active. So definitely in the Twitter sphere I'm at Jess _Spendlove, or more than happy for people to email me directly. So the best email address to get me on would be jessica.spendlove@gwsgiants.com.au. Perfect.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for giving up your time on a Wednesday evening. So
not a problem.
we'll keep in touch, and thanks again.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Speak to you soon. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to episode 92 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the chat with Jess. Just before I let you go, a massive thanks to both Val Performance, makers of the Nordboard, and Train with Push, the guys behind the Push Band. Don't forget to get over to paceyperformance.co.uk/92. Click on the link and you'll get access to Jess's presentation that she gives to draftees in the AFL every year. So you can get that for free and check that out. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will speak to you with some great guests coming up in episode 93.